Good Yontif. My name is Rebecca Shapiro, and I'm representing the congregation of B'nai Jacob in Jersey City. It's my honor to say a few words tonight. Tonight's event is about unity, solidarity in the Jewish community, but with our other family, specifically the Black and Hispanic community in Jersey City. Now more than ever, hate crimes have risen in recent years, and we are in greater need today to come together as one people against violence, anti-Semitism, and racism where we live and in the United States. After the shooting in Jersey City last year on this date, we have striven to work with others in our city and state to connect with concerned members and organizations that strengthen understanding and tolerance. That journey has just begun, and it will continue. It is Tikkun Olam, bringing the world together, and it is the effort of shalom or peace. Our synagogue is less than a mile from the shooting. The trauma and repercussions of that day's events are more crucial than ever to address. Thus, we need to proactively address why this is happening and actively address racism and anti-Semitism. We need to teach people not to hate. We must reset the idea of radicalization and focus on radicalizing love, understanding, support, and peace. However, this process is more than mere education. It is about action. It is a mitzvah to act against violence. When we see it and experience it, or another person or group experiences it, we need to make it stop. We are commanded to do this with words and deeds. Our coming together tonight gives me hope and strengthens my faith that we can make a difference now and in the future. We will make the world a better place for those who come after us. Thank you all.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rabbi Bronwyn of Congregation B'nai Jacob of Jersey City, and I want to open my remarks with a prayer from now someone I can call a friend, Sister Frances Salemi of the Sacred Heart School, a school that was on lockdown on that terrible day. And these are her words. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. These words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. seem particularly appropriate on this day, a day that both recalls a tragedy, but also marks the start of a holiday in which light plays a very important role. The compassionate and resilient people of our Greenville community have come together in faith to mourn those lost on this day 1 year ago. The Sacred Heart School family will never forget the suffering of the Jewish community. Now and always, we are here for you. We will always hold true to our mission to nurture in the hearts of our children the message of God's love for all people. For those good people whose lives were suddenly and tragically ended, we offer this simple prayer. Eternal rest grant unto them, O Lord, and let perpetual light shine upon them. May their souls and the souls of all the faithful departed through the mercy of God rest in peace. And let us all say, Amen. On this day of Hanukkah, on this first night, one of the questions that we ask is, what does it mean to be a hero? In the story of Hanukkah, the Greek army comes and destroys the Jewish people's temple, their sacred space, in hopes to destroy their spirit and in essence to destroy them once and for all. In this story, a hero is someone who fights for what they believe in, even when the odds are against them. A hero is sometimes someone who can look at just one day's worth of oil, just enough to light the lamps for one day, to rebuild what's been lost perhaps for just one day. But actually, they make it last for 8 days. The Hanukkah story says that the victory over the enemy's army and that one day's worth of oil lasting 8 days is a miracle of God. And I think many of us in here know that God's miracles often work through people, that the Spirit of God and godliness often emerges when people tap into that which makes them a hero, whether it's for their family and friends, their community, their city, their country, or even the world. So first, I want to talk about heroes tonight, and then we'll talk about miracles. Douglas Miguel Rodriguez Barzola is a hero to his family, his beloved wife Martha, his daughter Amy, who he moved from Ecuador to the United States in order to provide a better life. At his funeral, Amy said, "Daddy, when I get married, please ask God to give me a husband just like you, a good man, responsible, a hard worker." Martha said that everyone looked up to Douglas Miguel, and the man who always made time for family trips, for family meals, who was fun-loving, even though he worked a hard 6-day week every single week. And he was also a beloved uncle and a beloved member of his church, Iglesia Nueva Vida. I was lucky to get to speak with Pastor Williams Makazek, his pastor, and he told me that Douglas Miguel is on his heart every single day, and the hearts of his entire church community, who now and every day look up to him as a role model of family man, community, and church leader. And Douglas Miguel is also a hero to the Hasidic community. For even while his own life was at risk, he used his strength to open a back door so a customer could escape. In Jewish tradition, saving one life it's literally as if one saved an entire world. So Douglas Miguel saved an entire world that day. That's a hero. May his memory be for a blessing. Detective Joseph Seals also lived that principle in his work in the JCPD's ceasefire unit. Through his service, hundreds of illegal guns and weapons were taken off the streets, perhaps saving countless lives throughout Jersey City and throughout the state. Police officers from all over the country came to attend his funeral procession, and so many reported that the reason they came is because, as an officer reported to one of my colleagues, it's a family, it's a brotherhood. Each and every one of us risk our lives every single day, and our families never know when the day will come that they will have to make that great sacrifice. At his funeral, his son Adrian literally described Detective Seals as an American hero and a great man in and out of work. Joe will always be a hero to his family, to his beloved wife Laura and their 5 children, Haley, Adrian, Ethan, Isabel, and Ivana, and as well as his 3 brothers and 3 sisters and his mother, Deborah. And he is remembered, as friends of the family recalled, as the guy who shows up for everybody, who took great pride in getting the job done and being someone that everybody can rely on. That is a hero. May his memory be for a blessing. Now, some heroes work in ways that we may not always be able to recognize immediately, but for the individual lives they touch, they are a hero nonetheless. And that was Moshe Deutsch, who lived in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, who was a burgeoning rabbinical student and a beloved volunteer with Chai Lifeline, an organization that helps families with children with severe illnesses. At the time of this terrible violence, I was living in Brooklyn, just a neighborhood away, and I went to visit the Shiva house with Moshe's family. I arrived in the middle of the morning prayers and was ushered into a small part of the apartment with Moshe's female relatives and family friends. They were surprised that someone from Jersey City had come all that way, though I came to learn that actually many people from Jersey City came to visit that Shiva house. One person after the next described a young man who gave so many suffering young children a glimpse of joy and cheer, playing games with them or singing them songs to distract them during difficult times. When finally Moshe's father, Shulam, spoke, he said, he was a beautiful neshama, which means a soul. And then he said, Gam zu l'toiva, this too is for the good. For a hero, the good work they do lives on after them in others. May his memory be for a blessing. The Shiva house for Leah Mindel Ferenz was just a few blocks from this very synagogue. When I arrived, I sat with Leah Mindel's sisters and aunts and family friends. Her young children, Chaim, Devori, and Yiddish, were being cared for by older cousins and given sweets. One by one, Leah Mindel's sisters recounted stories of their bright and cheerful sister, the woman who at just 14 years old took care of their ill mother, the woman who, with her husband Moshe, created the only supermarket providing affordable food for the religious community, the woman who was known as in her building for welcoming everyone who was new to the neighborhood, who was the first to celebrate a simcha, a joyous occasion, and the first to provide support during a velus, or mourning. And on the day of my visit, a women's Torah study group from New York had actually come to pay their respects. And the teacher offered a piece of Torah about Joseph, who, despite being sold into slavery by his brothers, came to a point of reconciliation. And through his actions was actually to bring his family, he was able to bring his family back together. And as everyone amained this study, everyone pledged to do tzedakah, which is both charity and justice, in Leah Mindel's honor. Leah Mindel was a humble heroine and is a humble heroine. May her memory be for a blessing. It is in remembrance of these heroes that we're going to light a memorial candle known as a yahrzeit candle, meaning a year out or a year later. In Jewish tradition, we light a yahrzeit candle to take stock of the year of mourning that has passed and to recenter ourselves for how we wish to live in the year to come. This memorial candle that we will light will also serve as the shamash, the candle from which all the other candles of our menorah for this holiday of Hanukkah, of rededication, will be lit. As we honor these heroes and the light that they brought to this world, we will also be honoring how this light has been spread and passed on to all those who are here today. For many people living in Greenville, the devastating effects of gun violence and systematic racism have been long known, and now we've come to know domestic terror and anti-Semitism. Often it feels like our resources are few and far between to fight these great evils. How do we do it all when we have so little? How do we do it when it doesn't always feel like people care unless there's a television crew? How do we do it when our various communities are often pitted against one another? This, in fact, is the miracle, the true miracle. We do it by coming together and bringing the light that each and every one of us has to light the way towards a future of greater connection and coalition, creativity and community. Like the Jews of the Hanukkah story who literally had to rebuild their temple, the people of this community have been doing that work here in a myriad of ways. We cannot possibly name them all. But some examples. There's the Greenville Neighborhood Association that brings workshops and college programs to family throughout the area, and partnering with Jersey City Theater Center to create stories of Greenville, highlighting the work of Greenville artists and lifting up the experiences of Greenville residents. There are activists like Frank Educational Gilmore and Chris Gatson who cultivate pride in the schools and determination to create expansive learning and recreational opportunities for children in this neighborhood and across Jersey City. There are leaders from the Satmar community like Chesky Deutsch, who brought Hasidic volunteers for the first time to work with Assemblywoman Angela McKnight and her organization, Angela Cares, for their annual Christmas holiday food and toy drive. And thanks to community leaders like David Dowd and Sister Barbara, here we were able to hold what I believe is Jersey City's first joint Kwanzaa and Hanukkah candle lighting, the ritual object, the conjoined Kinora and Menorah we will be lighting in a moment. And of course, and to my great pride, and that warms my heart every day, is the work and coalition that B'nai Jacob has built with the Jersey City Anti-Violence Coalition Movement and its founder and executive director, Pam Johnson, who you'll be hearing from soon. Douglas Miguel Rodriguez Barzola, Moishe Deutsch, Leah Mindel Ferenz, and Detective Joseph Seals. May we be blessed to continue to do charity and justice in the light of your memory. And may the light continue to shine on this Hanukkah throughout this season and for countless years to come. It is my great honor to turn this over to my dear colleague, Rabbi Liana Morit of Temple Bethel, for the ritual of the candle lighting for Hanukkah. From there, we will return to light the memorial candle.
Thank you, Rabbi Bronwyn. It's really an honor to be here, although none of us, all of us wish that we didn't have to be and that we weren't commemorating anything. And that this was just the first night of Hanukkah that we chose to spend together. Jewish people aren't asked to believe in a lot of miracles. Yet that is what the holiday of Hanukkah is all about. Now, it's not really clear what the miracle is. It's kind of up to us to figure it out, perhaps even create the miracles. But then on Hanukkah, we're taught that we're supposed to advertise it, advertise the miracle. The mitzvah of Pirsume Nisa, advertising, publicizing the miracle, is on Hanukkah as important as the miracle itself. It's saying that what we put out there counts. The stories that we tell count. And there are a lot of stories out there. So we need to choose what we spread around. Do we spread around fear, mistrust, and hatred and bigotry? Or do we spread around understanding and embracing our differences? Do we advertise misinformation, disinformation, conspiracy theories? Or do we take a breath and check our sources for truth? Do we spread the same old, stale normal? Or do we, like the Maccabees, disrupt the status quo and create a saner world, a new order, a more peaceful, loving world, and a new normal? So with light, with truth, with looking into one another's eyes and seeing our common humanity, we're writing a different story. Because what we've seen is not a normal that we want to live with. 1 year after the despicable rampage of hate and slaughter and bigotry, we're advertising the story of our light. Our light is that we stand together despite the forces that try to divide us. Our light is brighter despite the venomous hatred spewed against us. Our light is stronger, that we're closer as communities in understanding and compassion and support. Our light is celebrating our future despite the virus raging around us. Our light is illuminating blessings that we're finding in this darkness. And that as we find those blessings, like a spark and a light, we're shining that light and spreading those blessings. Remember, the miracle of Hanukkah isn't that the oil lasted 8 days. The miracle is that when it was dark and there wasn't enough to last, that we advertised the miracle to light and spread that light anyway. Because light is even more contagious than a virus. So now I invite you all to close your eyes and send your attention to your inner pilot light. Because no matter how dim it might feel on dark days, it hasn't gone out. And so now, with your attention on that inner light, feel a hand, a warm, strong, patient hand, cupping and nurturing that light. And at the same time, those same hands are supporting you in health and in love, in all the work that we do. And watch that flame grow expand. Feel it warm you. Let it animate you. This is your pilot light. And this is the center candle that we're about to light, the shamash, ready to spread the miracle. And we say first in the English, blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign over all time and space, who sanctifies us with these challenges and commands us to nurture the light of dedication. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, who wrought miracles to our ancestors on those days at this season. And blessed are you, Adonai, our God, who has given us life, sustains us, and who has brought us to this very moment in time. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Chanukah. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asa nisim lavoteinu bayamim ahem hazman hazeh. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, shehechianu v'kimanu v'higianu lazman hazeh.
So in those great words from Rabbi Moret, that that light should be contagious, that light should spread around us. In a moment, we'll light this beautiful ritual object that you see before you was designed by one of our congregants, Alex Pergamont. And it is actually the conjoining of a kinara, the candelabra for Kwanzaa, and the menorah, the candelabra for Hanukkah. And you'll see, if you look at it, you get to see on the screen that we still have the same wax from the candles that we lit just a year ago, as, again, another, now I can say dear friend, Councilwoman Mira Prinzare, helped arrange and make those connections for us to start becoming a closer community. As you'll see in this ritual object, the large candle, which is serving as our shamash, is also the memorial candle for those who are lost. And as we light that memorial candle and it lights our first candle for Hanukkah, lifting up those words of Rabbi Moret, we are going to spread this light. It is my distinct pleasure to invite another one of our beautiful colleagues who's been such a presence this last year, the immense Rabbi Rob Scheinberg from the United Synagogue of Hoboken, who'll present a piece from his choir and a piece that he will perform himself from their beautiful sanctuary. Rabbi Rob.
Ma'u Surya Thank you, Rabbi Mullen, for inviting me to participate and our community to participate in this commemoration. Jewish history has, of course, seen more than our share of acts of violence targeting the Jewish people. And so our reaction is one of grief, but also one of vigilance and resilience. In synagogues around the world during this coming week of Hanukkah, Psalm 116 will be chanted each day as part of the Hallel Psalms. These Hallel Psalms are generally festive, but Psalm 116 appears to be the words of someone who endured a terrible and terrifying crisis and emerged troubled and shaken. And yet, after having survived this crisis, the psalmist says, Ma ashiv lashem kol tagmulohi alai. How can I repay God for all the good that God has done for me? Because this is the Jewish way to which we aspire, to be determined to always find something to be grateful for, even in the midst of sadness and even after a terrible tragedy. And we are so grateful. We are grateful for the beautiful example of the lives of Leah Mindel-Ferencz, Moshe Deutsch, Douglas Miguel Rodriguez, and Detective Joseph Seals, all of blessed memory, all of whose lives were full of love and dedication and compassion for others. We are grateful for the quick actions of first responders who prevented a terrible tragedy from being even worse. We are grateful for the self-sacrificial acts that saved the lives of others. We are grateful to have seen people of all backgrounds coming together to commiserate and mourn together, and to pledge to work together to struggle against the scourges of anti-Semitic hatred and racism and the easy availability of deadly weapons that threaten a most diverse city. And we are grateful to come together 1 year later with the prayer that Jersey City will continue to heal and emerge ever stronger. Words of Psalm 116. Mashiv Lashem Kol Tagmulohi Alai Kos Yeshuot Esah Umeshem Hashem Ekra Mashiv Lashem Kol Tagmulohi Alai Kos Yeshuot Esah Uveshem Hashem Ekra Nidarai Lashem Hashem Negdana Lechol Yakam B'nei Hashem Havavta L'chasidav Ana Hashem Ki Ani Avdecha Ani Avdecha B'Ramatecha Ani Avdecha B'Ramatecha Pitachta leMoserai Lecha ezbach zerach toda Uveshem Hashem ekra Nidarai Lashem Hashalem Negdana lechol amor Bechatzot Beit Hashem B'tochechi Yerushalayim B'tochechi Yerushalayim Hallelujah.
Thank you. The next portion of our program is going to be composed of community testimonials and words of kindness and unity. The first person who is going to speak with us is Councilwoman Joyce Waterman, and she will be with us on Zoom.
Good evening. A year ago today, a tragedy happened. Innocent lives were taken. Homes and a community were disrupted. But in the midst of the tragedy, we would not allow fear or division to grip our hearts. We found our strength in one another. And tonight is a testament to that solidarity that we will work with each other. So let us remember in times of tragedy, the light of hope will always rise. Jehovah Shalom to all.
Thank you. Next, we have Shesky Deutsch, and he will be pre-recorded, and he's having a conversation, I believe, with our rabbi. Thank you.
Hi, Chesky. Thank you so
Hi,
much.
hello.
Oh, it's so good to be with you, and thank you so much for being with me. I just wanted to ask you and take this opportunity to ask you a few questions, especially because of your immense work that you did and really organized in Jersey City, especially with Angela McKnight. So we'll just start sort of at the beginning. So how did you feel, or how did you feel personally affected by the shooting at the kosher supermarket last December?
It's really hard to describe feelings. I mean, the immediate after effect, I was devastated. I mean, it's crazy what happened. Both from like actual people died, people that I knew, people that I know the families, and at the same time, the trauma that my kids and their friends went through is like being targeted as Jews, like changed my own and as well as my kids' whole perspective on life. It's a whole new level.
So, I mean, having that experience of being targeted, having that experience of feeling that vulnerability, did you see yourself as having a specific role in the weeks after the shooting, even in the days after the shooting?
Again, I try when I see a problem, I try to jump in and help as much as possible. So that's what I did in the aftermath. I lived there, my kids were there, it was my community. So I did my best to do whatever needs to be done.
And would you say prior to the shooting, prior to this horrible event, did you ever think that anything like this could happen in Jersey City, like in Greenville, in your neighborhood?
To be honest, unfortunately, we hear about it too much. That was my biggest fear, sort of. I mean, to say we do hear of these stuff. So of course, I was always worried about. I was like, I feel to a certain sense that I'm lucky that I'm the part of the part of the world that we live in. We hear of it less. So, but unfortunately, things happen, and yeah, it's pretty terrifying.
Yeah. So being that, you felt this, need and, and I mean, not to put words in your mouth, but like it very much feels, I get the sense from you and from others really like a Jewish calling that like when something like this happens, like we have to come together, we have to do what's right to fight a problem. So, if you could say more specifically, like what were some of the ways that you work to build connections between the Black communities and the Satmar communities in Greenville? And if you want, also you can say more what specifically drew you to, working with Angela McKnight or any of the specific projects that you did.
So again, it's pretty straightforward. In the aftermath of whatever happened, it was like every event of darkness, there's some good things that come out of it. So it basically brought exposure to a lot of different issues, and more importantly, it brought exposure to the people that like the people from all different communities that showed up and showed support and showed willingness to work along. And Angela McKnight is a perfect example, right? She just showed up and started having a dialogue about important issues that pertains to the entire community. And that made it a perfect opportunity to discuss and sit together and work together what could be done to better everything about the community.
So one of the things I remember being really struck by, was just like, I mean, not just you, but you really organized several members from the Satmar community to help on, and was it a Christmas drive? It was a toy drive. Can you say a little bit more about the projects you guys worked on together?
Yeah, so then it was actually with Pamela Johnson, like we sat and strategized. I personally, my philosophy is like we could talk a lot, but what could be done? So we talked about that it was a terrifying event for the entire neighborhood, not one specific community, but everybody was shaking and everybody. So what can we do to just give and to show to practically help people? So that was the perfect opportunity. That it's a time of holidays. It was Hanukkah and it was other holidays. So we figured we just brainstormed. We came up with this idea. How about we do some type of a drive? So we did it. That's the short version.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you guys really, really did it. And it was I think it was really inspiring for so many people in the community. And so since that time, has there, I guess we'll sort of close here, but, that work was so important in the weeks afterwards. And I think it really sent a message that, even though there are tensions in our community, that all of the different sort of subsects of Greenville, of Jersey City, that we know that we're all stronger together. So like now,
Exactly.
now a year out, is there anything that's still sort of sitting with you, things that you would like to see in the future for our community, things that you feel like we still need to be working on,
Again, as you probably know that things change in my personal life as well. So me personally, I focus now on my family. My family went through some stuff, so I'm here to help as much as I need or I can for the community. But I really hope and I see that the work should continue. We should all get back to normal life when we could have a discussion about quote unquote normal problems, right? But now it's a little bit different timing.
Yeah. It feels like it's so interesting with Hanukkah being a holiday about sort of increasing light. Like, what does it mean to have the light where we can return to a place of normal and maybe even a better normal?
Exactly.
Amen. Amen. Well, thank you so much for speaking with me, Chesky, and just wishing you, your family, and your community just a beautiful, beautiful Hanukkah Sameach, and just hoping that we'll be able to do more projects together in the future.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care. Good night.
Good night.
Hi. Next, we're very lucky to have Father Victor Kennedy. He is representing both Sacred Heart and also he is a police chaplain. So he's having a dual role here.
I'm Father Vic Kennedy. I'm one of the police chaplains for Jersey City. When I was first invited about a month ago to come today, I thought I was being invited to pray. And then I found out they wanted me to do a meditation instead. And I said, well, let me first open my heart in prayer so that my heart lifts unto the Lord, so that my words don't get ahead of my heart and my heart can be connected to the Father who created me. I think at times like this, it's essential that we be authentic men and women of prayer who lift up our hearts and touch the Lord's presence and let him fill our hearts. See, I see the image through my 43 years I've been a priest. I've seen the ugliness of the human heart, but I've also seen the wonder of the human heart. The joy, the creative power, the reaching out, the touching, the filling, the hoping. And it's because of that, I turn to the, see, when I read the scriptures, I don't read the scriptures as history. When I read the Hebrew scriptures or the Christian scriptures, I read them to remember. I read them to remember that God is involved in our lives. I read them to remember that he's functioning and he is present in our lives. And in that memory, he lifts us to his face. The word remember in English is head trip. In the Jewish tradition, remember, God lifts it to his face. He sees us. And when he sees us, He graces us. He blesses us. Throughout the scriptures, either the Hebrew or the Christian scriptures, you see God's involvement. I was thinking of Hanukkah as I prayed this morning with the family and Jersey City Police at the cemetery. Hanukkah, the light that shatters the darkness. Hanukkah, where men and women say, no, I won't be part of it. When someone tries to enslave, when someone tries to cripple, there are men and women who say, no, I won't be part of it. And the Maccabean brothers rose up. There was a lot of sacrifice. A lot of people died, but a lot of people lived. And the same with Joe. Joseph, Detective Joseph, he said, no, I can't let it be happening. I can't let it be part of it. And a life was sacrificed, but a lot of lives were saved. The ability to respond to hate with the love of God, to respond to hate and say, no, I won't be part of it. And to remember that God is still present. God is still blessing. God is still gracing. In my own tradition, Christmas, the Star of Bethlehem. But the real meaning of Christmas is Easter. The true meaning of Christmas is not cutesy wootsy. The true meaning of Christmas is the Lord is risen. When I prayed at the tomb of Joseph, I remembered Easter, and is from there I hope they receive the joys of Christmas. Have a holy Hanukkah. May it fill you with laughter and joy. Most importantly, may it fill you with light that shatters the darkness.
Hi. Now we'll be hearing from New Jersey Attorney General Grewal.
Thank you, Michael, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to join in this remembrance. On December 10th, 2019, our state was shattered by the deadliest domestic terror incident in New Jersey history. On that day, two domestic terrorists, fueled by a twin hatred of the Jewish people and of law enforcement, not only held Jersey City and our state hostage for hours, but they also murdered Jersey City Detective Joseph Seals, Moshe Deutsch, Mindy Ferenz, and Douglas Miguel Rodriguez. May all their memories be for a blessing. Those two terrorists sought to divide us. By targeting Jersey City, one of our most diverse cities, the city where I was born. But Jersey City is an American city, a city that reflects the values and the strengths of our nation. It's a city where the site of the attack, a kosher supermarket, stands proudly across the street from a Catholic school, right down the block from a Dominican bodega, on a street named after Dr. Martin Luther King. It's a city of Chinese grocers and of Indian shopkeepers and recent college graduates, all striving for a better life, right in the shadow of the Statue of Liberty. And so rather than let those terrorists divide us, we all responded by coming together, by grieving together, and by recommitting ourselves to protect all of the diverse communities that make Jersey City, that make this state, and that make this country the beacon of hope and freedom that it is for so many. Now, 1 year later, we continue to remember and to honor those murdered in that horrific act of senseless violence by coming together and by redoubling our commitment to those same freedoms and to those same values. We've been working hard since day one of the Murphy administration to address the type of hate and bias that manifested itself in that horrific violent act last year. We're doing that by addressing and preventing these issues from arising among our young people. That's through the work of our Youth Bias Task Force, which has just released an extraordinary blueprint of over 25 transformational recommendations that we are now working to implement. We've also established NJ Bias, an online portal that makes it easier for our residents to report such incidents. We've revised law enforcement guidelines that cover the investigation and prosecution of bias offenses. And through our Division of Criminal Justice, we're prosecuting those that engage in criminal acts of hate. We've also transformed our Division on Civil Rights so we can hold accountable individuals and organizations that violate our state's law against discrimination, one of the strongest such laws in the country. We're also holding social media companies responsible for their role in propagating hate and allowing bigots to find community. For example, we recently led a coalition of states calling on Facebook to better prevent messages of hate and bias and disinformation from spreading on their platforms. And we also directed the company to provide more help to its users facing online harassment and abuse. Together with our federal, state, and Homeland Security partners, we're also working to educate and protect vulnerable communities by building trust through our outreach. And with many of these same partners, we're providing grant funding so faith communities can harden their houses of worship, an unfortunate reality of our times. And at a much broader level, we're reducing gun violence. We're doing that because it's a core priority for us. But here's the thing, we're addressing it for what it is, a full-blown public health crisis. So we're focusing our efforts on prevention, on enforcement, and on treatment. Now, these are just a few examples of the hard work we're doing to prevent the type of hate-fueled violence that we experienced a year ago. In a year that's brought so many challenges to our state and to our country, I nevertheless find myself reflecting on a chance visit that occurred soon after the December 10th attacks. Standing right in front of the kosher supermarket in Jersey City, I was attempting to process the horror and tragedy that took place there days earlier. And I saw a group of young boys smiling and waving at me from a second floor window of a neighboring yeshiva. So I decided to visit them. And I asked Colonel Callahan, the superintendent of the New Jersey State Police, to join me. And after first meeting with the rabbi who ran that school, we entered the small classroom overlooking the street. And when we walked into that classroom, all the kids got up and they started clapping. But they weren't clapping for me. They were clapping for Colonel Callahan because he was wearing his trooper uniform. And that represented safety and comfort to those young children. It was in that moment that I saw dozens and dozens of tiny little miracles. Miracles who had been trapped in that small room for hours while a gunfight raged beneath them. And from their classroom, I also saw the elementary school right across the street. And I realized that it too was filled with its own miracles, all kept safe because of the heroism and sacrifice of first responders, people like Detective Joseph Seals. And so it's somehow fitting that the one-year anniversary of the terrorist attacks in Jersey City falls on the first night of Hanukkah, the Festival of Lights, a time for us to celebrate the miracle of the menorah burning for 8 nights instead of 1. And this year we have our own miracles to commemorate from the tragedy 1 year ago. We owe it to those young boys in that yeshiva and to all the children that were spared that day. We owe it to them to make sure that they can go to school without worrying about their security. And we owe it to them to do everything we can to ensure that all of our children can grow up and live free of fear and without hate. So as we celebrate Hanukkah tonight, let's honor those we lost last year. Let's embrace their legacies. Let's do that by working together as individuals and as a community to make our great diverse state safer and more just. Thank you.
Next, we'll be hearing from State Assemblywoman Angela McKnight.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening. Today is a day of mourning and remembrance of all of us in Jersey City and throughout the state who recall this tragic day last year. My prayers for continuous comfort go out to the families who lost loved ones that day, to the senseless violence that occurred. This was a horrific event that shook everyone in the community, including myself. Today, I remember the souls that died that day, the students who heard bullets firing outside of their classrooms, and the neighboring residents and business owners who were terrified. Days after the event, I recall visiting Sacred Heart School, as well as walking down Martin Luther King Drive to speak with families who were still living there and running their businesses there. They shared experiences of pain, fear, and trauma from an explosion of gunfire that they had never witnessed in their community before. These senseless acts of violence are something we as legislators must work hard to stop. As the chairwoman of the Homeland Security and State Preparedness Committee, I have sponsored legislation such as requiring school districts to provide anti-bias instruction as part of the New Jersey Student Learning Standards and Comprehensive Health and Physical Ed, and requires school districts to designate a chief equity officer. I am very committed to this mission. I'm very sad that we have to come together for such a sad occasion this evening. However, I am very pleased to have this time of unity and compassion for each other, regardless of race, culture, and religion. I commend the various social justice groups that represents the Jewish community and the Black community for coming together since this tragic incident happened in order to work toward healing and peace. Let's make sure the lives we lost on this day last year live on in our spirits in a positive way. Let's honor them by promoting nonviolence, love, and respect for all. And I just want to also mention the work that we have done with Chesky. We've raised funds and we gave to the family. I've also went to Shiver, and I've been talking to Chesky and other groups to continuously work together for all communities. And I want to also say thank you to Jewish Federation for their continuous partnership, whereas this year, as well as last year, we packed 500 book bags for students here in Jersey City, and we have also went together and delivered them to the students in Jersey City. So partnerships such as with Chesky and the Jewish Federation, their Supplies for Success program, these are just two great programs where when we work together, we can continuously build on our community. So I thank you for having me here tonight. And again, whatever I can do to help move all of our communities forward, I am just a phone call, a text, a social media shout out away. And again, I want to send my prayers and my deep condolences to the entire community for what we have experienced last year. Thank you.
Next, we're going to hear brief messages from U.S. Senator Cory Booker and U.S. Senator Robert Menendez.
Hi, it's Cory Booker. I want to thank the Jewish Federation of Northern New Jersey and Temple B'nai Jacob for virtually gathering us together to pay respect to the tragedy of 1 year ago today, December 10th, 2019, where we lost the lives of Detective Joseph Seals, of Mindell Ferenc, Moshe Deutsch, and Douglas Miguel Rodriguez Barzo. This was an act of hate, of utter violence. Today, we remember, we commit ourselves to the understanding that it's not just about saying, I'm not an anti-Semite or not racist. If anti-Semitism exists in our world, we all must be affirmatively against anti-Semitism, bigotry, and hate. We must be agents of love, of decency, of kindness in a world that so urgently needs it. Today, I give honor to the family members of those lost. That tragic night last year, when I stood in Jersey City with members of law enforcement and Attorney General, other activists gathered together, we knew that this must not be forgotten, that we must continue to come together and stand together and work together to reject this kind of hate. All across the world tonight, Jewish families will gather to celebrate Hanukkah. It's a festival of lights. And it is a reminder that just one light can cast away the darkness, and that each of us must commit ourselves to being light workers in these difficult times. Indeed, the only way we can heal our world, the only way we can tikkun olam, is if we are active agents in that cause. It's Martin Luther King who talked about repentance. He said we must repent not just for the vitriolic words and violent actions of the bad people, but also the appalling silence and inaction of the good people. Let us not be silent. Let us not be complacent. We have work to do. And as we honor those lives lost, as we pray and give strength to the families and survivors, let us also commit ourselves to doing the work, to bringing the light and the love that this world so urgently needs. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and Hag Sameach. On this first night of Hanukkah, let us be reminded that even a little bit of light can eradicate a whole lot of darkness. Today, we remember the lives tragically lost: Mindy, Moshe, Douglas Miguel, and Detective Joseph Seals, and others who were wounded on this fateful day 1 year ago. The targeted attack on the Jewish community and the brave police officers who served to protect us was an attack on all of us. We must continue to condemn such evil. Our strength is in our differences, and as we work in pursuit of our shared goals, let us live each day with love and light guiding our way. I will continue to stand with the community, committed to combating hatred in all forms and on all fronts. My prayers are with the families of those lost and the entire community, and I wish everyone a safe and healthy holiday season.
Now, we're very lucky to be able to have Pamela Johnson and Rabbi Bronwyn Mullen have a brief discussion, dialogue, interview.
Okay. Well, while we're loading Pam's video back up, I'll say there is nothing that gives me more pleasure than talking to my sister and queen, the founder and executive director of the Jersey City Anti-Violence Coalition, the Anti-Violence Coalition of Hudson County. So Pam, are you there?
Yes, I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank God. I can still hear you, sister. Oh, good.
Yes.
So,
I'm honored to be here. So thank you for having me. And I appreciate this platform.
oh, so good. I was worried I wasn't going to be able to see you. Seeing you is the best part, even in a
Oh, you
COVID
can see me
generation.
as well. Okay. Okay.
Okay. Well, on this, as we're reflecting on the year that we've been through, I wanted to sort of take us back for a moment to that day, December 10th, 2019.
Yeah.
So for you and your organization, all the work that you've been doing for years now on combating gun violence in this neighborhood, what were some of your early thoughts when you heard that there was this active shootout and that it was motivated by anti-Semitism?
So, when I first heard about it, I didn't know what it was motivated by. I just knew that my community was calling on me as they usually do. So I received several phone calls, dozens of phone calls, talking about explosive gunfire in the area of MLK between Bayview and Bidwell. Didn't know what was happening, but callers described it as something different than what we normally hear. And so I immediately, called my team and said, we need to meet up there. And I went outside to attempt to get in my car and drive there. But we were locked down over here as well, because I didn't know that, Detective Seals was shot in Bayview Cemetery. I live right next door to the cemetery. So when I came outside and, I couldn't go in or out, even walking or driving. So it was very terrifying. And I said I heard that there were some things happening in the area of MLK and between Bayview and Bidwell, and wanted to go there and see what was going on. And then I found out that a law enforcement officer, I didn't know his name at the time, but found out Detective Seals was killed in Bayview Cemetery with a traffic stop, and just felt like really sad at that moment. And then found out that that area was basically under siege. And I haven't really talked about this prior to speaking to you or an interview that I did 2 days ago, but I had 2 nephews in Sacred Heart School. And so as a family, we were worried about my nephews and their well-being, and just worried about the community as a whole. So it was a very terrifying day.
Yeah. So in the days and weeks after the shooting, there was a lot of light brought to some of the tensions that had been in our community for a long time, especially around issues of the sort of the newer Satmar Hasidic community moving in, and this idea that gentrification was changing the neighborhood, and that there was a lot of, as we all know and remember, right, posts that had a lot of anti-Semitic language, but it was also bringing to light some very serious tensions around the fact that the Black community in Greenville and many, many people have felt neglected around issues of gun violence in the neighborhood that have been plagued for a long time. So I'm wondering, since this has been so much of your work and so much of what you have taught me and Congregation B'nai Jacob, and I think many Jewish communities in Jersey City, how did you then, with all of this happening, all these tensions rising, how did you come to end up really reaching out and connecting to Chesky Deutsch and starting to do that community work together? Also, I believe with Rabbi Shapiro of Chabad.
Right. I think so in all that you said, there are different issues, right? So yes, gentrification has happened in our community and has been happening for years, right? But I think that, when things are present and people are fearful of being able to sustain their lives in Jersey City, so it wasn't tensions with the Jewish community, but tensions just in general of how are we going to, continue to live in Jersey City, a community where we were born and raised. I'm born and raised in Jersey City, and so is my mom. My dad migrated here from Sumter, South Carolina, when he was 18 years old. And, that was many years ago. But I think that, tensions arise when this happened and people were highlighted on some videos, right? And so those tensions weren't explained to maybe those individuals speaking on those videos had kids in Sacred Heart School, right, who was locked down, right? So maybe some people in those videos, their tensions was because they just didn't understand what was happening in their community that they were born and raised or been here for a very long time. And I make sure that I keep continuing to say this, like, we weren't necessarily friends, with Orthodox Jews that moved here or any other community that moved here, right? Who wasn't even Jewish, right? But we're definitely not enemies, right? We're not enemies, and the Black community in Greenville and on the South Side are nothing but a community of people who want to work together and want to make sure we're thriving as a community. So I just didn't want to give light to any of the tensions that, a lot of media outlets that were, putting on us as saying that, there were anti-Semitic things happening in the community. This was an isolated incident by people who didn't live in our community. And it doesn't reflect the broader community. And so I just always want to make sure I'm doing that justice and saying that, because they don't reflect us. And like I said, we weren't necessarily best friends, but we are not enemies at all.
Well, one thing that I take very great pride in, we're sort of coming to the end of our time segment, but that it was actually because of you and Frank Gilmore that I came to know Chesky Deutsch and know the amazing work that he was doing in the Satmar community.
Right. And you did ask me about Chesky. I'm so sorry. And I met Chesky, actually, it was like so random, right? I met Chesky. I was having a lunch meeting at Broadway Diner with Paul Bellenboyer from the Health and Human Services Department in Jersey City. And Chesky Deutsch and another person, I forgot the rabbi's name, was meeting with Councilman Jermaine Robinson and Councilwoman Denise Ridley. And so when they saw us over there, like literally a booth apart, they said, oh, you got to call her over here. And so we just kind of joined that meeting. And then we just went from there and organized so many great efforts in Jersey City. I mean, we organized the toy drive and the food drive, but also we fought to make sure that the needs assessment, the violence needs assessment, was brought forth towards the city council. And we stood together as a community, because what we understood with each other is that what do we have in common, right? And Chesky said, what do you want as a community? What have you heard on the ground? And what I heard was, we all want to be living in a safe environment, for one. We all want fair and affordable housing, right? Rent that we can afford, right? And we all want our community to thrive at the end of the day with economic development, economic wealth, small businesses developing, and our communities developing. And so when we agreed on those three things, we just kind of took off and running. Unfortunately, that initiative happened in December of 2019, and then COVID also happened a couple of months later. And so it kind of hindered our process, but I have no doubt that we will pick up where we left off when we get back to normal.
So there's no better really way to end on that note, which I think really is just that we are continuing to move, even though there are stops, right? Even though there are obstacles. And just want to say again, to thank Pam Johnson for being with us, this woman works all the time, every day, every hour of the day. And just to say again, on behalf of Congregation B'nai Jacob, nothing makes us more prouder as a Jewish community than to be partners with the Anti-Violence Coalition of Hudson County. This is, I think, one of the greatest joys and greatest honors that we feel as a community that we get to do and pledge our core mitzvah of Tikkun Olam, of repairing the world. Thank you for helping us to do that.
Thank you, Rabbi, and I appreciate you. And all I can really end this and say is we are in this together. At the end of the day, we are all we have as a community.
Amen.
Let's
You're all we have. Good to be with you.
My sister. Thank you.
Sister. Thank you.
Thank you. Last, we're going to have, last of our community speakers, we're going to have a message from Governor Phil Murphy and Jason Shamus from the Jewish Federation.
Today, we remember those whom we lost 1 year ago to a senseless and horrific act of violence.
We've been working hard since day one of the Murphy administration to address the type of hate and bias that manifested itself in that horrific violence last year. But we're doing that by trying to address and prevent these issues from arising among our young people in the first place. And that's the work of our Youth Bias Task Force.
ADL Center on Extremism uncovered the Facebook profiles of one of the perpetrators, which revealed an undeniable pattern of virulent rhetoric and extreme ideology fixated on a hostility against purported enemies, namely the Jewish people.
As we've moved forward from the attack, our partnership with the ADL is only strengthened through community liaison events, again, relationship building and intelligence sharing, and then also working together to make sure that communities across New Jersey, not just the Jewish community, but all communities of faith, are resilient from attacks and can better prepare to defend and stop attacks before they occur.
A horrific event like this is an affront to all of humanity, and we must be united in combating this and all forms of bias and hate.
So let's teach our young people that lesson of love. That's how we can best honor those we've lost. And that's how we can embrace their legacies to better ourselves and to better our communities.
We're all created in God's image. We're all the same. And it sounds like basic stuff, but kids need to hear this at a regular basis.
So this year, as we start Hanukkah, we do so in somber memory of all those lost to all manner of tragedy this year, but also with the hope for the future, that light will always overcome darkness, a message reinforced by the Hanukkah story itself.
Little light will push away so much darkness.
Good evening. Tonight, during this program, we've heard many inspiring and often somber reflections from the tragedy that occurred last year in Jersey City. On a personal level, each of us has been affected differently by this horrific event, which dominated the landscape of the city and our metropolitan area. But for all of us, the senseless killings that occurred at the kosher market and the cemetery that morning on December 10th was a complete affront to humanity. I remember getting the first phone call telling me there was a shooting in Jersey City. Deep down, I was praying that our community was not going to be the next victim of an anti-Semitic hate crime. But as we all know, as the day unfolded and the details emerged, that nightmare became a reality. Throughout the week, several important themes emerged that are still today providing us with an active roadmap to unify and secure our community. First, we owe a huge debt of gratitude to law enforcement, first responders, and elected officials. Their response was overwhelming, even as they mourn the loss of one of their own. They demonstrated leadership, courage, and empathy as our community came to grips with a tragedy beyond our comprehension. Our partnership is strong, and I look forward to continuing to build these relationships to ensure the safety and security of our community. Second, as a community, we remain vulnerable. We live in a world where violent events can occur, and we cannot let our guard down. We must be prepared. We must fortify our buildings and train our staff. We must find and work with willing partners. Violence against Jews and other minorities is now coming from all elements in our society, and not just white supremacists. This incident opened our eyes to a different kind of hate, a different kind of evil, one that is unacceptable, unpredictable, and equally heinous as other violent hate crimes. Third, we must come together as a community, not just the Jewish community and not just the Black community, all of us together. We must focus on our shared values of helping those in need, combating hate and bias, and keeping our communities safe. We must practice to do good. This past year, Federation partnered with B'nai Jacob and Angela Cares and packed and distributed over 500 backpacks for children who deserve to start their school year just like my kids, with a backpack filled with brand new school supplies. Together with other community partners, we helped fill food pantries, deliver food to hungry seniors, and donated hygiene kits to the homeless. This is how we build a community of tolerance, of acceptance, and of love. As we remember the innocent lives lost 1 year ago today, we want to use their legacy to provide hope for better times. Hope is a powerful thing. It inspires us to do the impossible and helps us carry on during difficult and challenging times. I want to thank Rabbi Bronwyn and Michael Zwane and their entire committee for their incredible commitment to making this program so meaningful. In the words of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, we have always held to the hope that there is a better life, a better world beyond the horizon. May the memories of Mindy Ferenz, Moshe Deutsch, Detective Joe Seals, and Miguel Rodriguez forever remain a blessing.
This concludes our speakers. We're now going to hear Carolyn Light. And Carolyn, thank you.
We want to thank everyone for being here in our community this evening. And just in closing words, we feel that sometimes words actually, they can't carry the whole heart of what we're longing for. And what we're really longing for is a sense of protection, and protection that comes in truly being arm in arm, hand in hand, and heart to heart. Our wonderful Chazan, Carolyn Light, will sing and lead us in two of the classical Jewish liturgical prayers. The first is a Hashkivenu, a prayer which essentially translates to, God, please protect me on the road and when at home, and protect me in my bed, and let me rise up again in peace. And something that we have learned this year is that none of those places when it comes to peace or safety can be taken for granted. And the second liturgical piece that our Chazan will sing for us is Oseh Shalom. Let us be made for peace, for all the children of Israel, all human people, all who are wrestling, all who are striving, and all who are reaching out to one another to build a stronger, more connected world. Chazan Carolyn.
Thank you, Rabbi. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Leshalom V'chamideinu Malkeinu L'chaim Ufros aleinu Sukkot Shlomecha V'taknenu beitze tova milfanecha v'chamideinu malkeinu l'chaim ufros aleinu sukkot shlomecha v'taknenu beitze tova milfanecha v'hushenu laman shemecha Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu L'Shalom. Now we'll do the Oseh Shalom, and for those of you who know it, feel free to sing and do the clapping if you want. Oseh Shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, be'al kol Yisrael v'imru, imru amen. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. V'imru, imru, amen. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Two more times. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Thank you.
We thank our Chazan, who we really credit for giving us the most joyful prayer for peace, because for all of us in this movement for liberation, for greater humanity, we know that we need joy to help power that light. And in closing words, and in this last moment, I just want to offer, again, a great thanks to all of our immense speakers, our activists, our clergy, our community members. We are committed to pledge tzedakah, charity and justice, in honor of Douglas Miguel Rodriguez Barzola, to pledge charity and justice in honor of Moshe Deutsch. We pledge charity and justice in honor of Leah Mindel Ferenz, and we pledge charity and justice in honor of Detective Joseph Seals. And part of that pledge is knowing that every moment of every day is an act of this work, of combating violence, of combating hatred, racism, anti-Semitism, misogyny in all of its forms. And of course, Jersey City has known a recent tragedy as well. Just this Friday, the life of 36-year-old Alicia McFadden, mother of 4, was taken too soon in a senseless act of gun violence. I want to lift up her name because it's actually our obligation to say her name. And part of the reason we say her name is because in Jewish tradition, just like we honored at this yahrzeit, we have to keep names and their legacies alive. So it is my honor, though a sad one, and perhaps also joyous too, to invite a new and wonderful friend, activist and artist, Elder Erica Streeter Adams, to also close us out in song. Because what's going to bring all of our communities together in the great Jewish tradition, the Christian tradition, the tradition of Islam, the tradition of all the great religions, is knowing that we are on a constant fight for justice and for goodness. And God, may the source of being bless us with joy in that path.
Grace and peace be unto you on this evening as I listen to the words of comfort. But what sparked was the words that the Father shared on tonight. And so I bring grace and cover you with the oils of peace, Father, because what you said just penetrated beyond the measure of what we're experiencing. And my queen sister, Rabbi Mullen, and my sister that's not present but was here, the all-knowing Queen Bee, Pam Johnson. We honor you in Jersey City. On that evening, I am also an educator at Henry Snyder High School, and so we lied on the floor for hours, not understanding what was going on. But we know now we just need to remember that the light is real and that we embrace the light because it's a greater light, not the internal light that dims our hearts through mourning and grief, but that greater light that sustains us and gives us peace that surpasses all human comprehension. And so when I was trying to figure out what shall I serenade you with from my heart, I thought of one of the older songs of my mothers in our sanctuary. We are one in the Spirit, we are one in the Lord, we are one in the Spirit, we are one in the Lord, and we pray that our unity may one day be restored, and they'll know we're believers by our love, by our love. Yes, they'll know we are believers by our love. We will walk with each other. We will walk side by side. We will walk with each other. We will walk side by side. And together we'll spread the news that God is on our side, and they'll know we're believers by our love, by our love. Yes, they'll know we're believers by our love. We will work with each other. We will work hand in hand. We will work with each other. We will work hand in hand, and we'll guard each man's dignity and save each man's pride. And they'll know we're believers by our love, by our love. Yes, they'll know we're believers by our love.
May they know that we are believers by our love. Thank you, Elder Erica. I want to take this opportunity to wish everyone a Chag Urim Sameach. May there, even on this memorial of lifting up these lights, may this be a season of light, of increased light. And I truly believe in blessing that there is no act of anti-Semitism, of racism, that can truly keep us from one another. On this holiday, let us raise the light together. Thank you for being with us this Hanukkah, this December 10th, 1 year later, solidarity and reflection.